Hello, I'm Officer Aaron Snell with the Everett Police Department. Welcome to The Beat. Today our guest is the Chief, Dan Templeman. Welcome.
Thanks, Aaron.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Good. So, since this is our first show together, can you please tell me a little bit about yourself and kind of a little bit of your background, your family, those types of things?
Sure, you bet. Well, I'm married. I've been married for 13 years, and I've got two boys. Grew up in the Lake Stevens area pretty much my whole life. Went to Lake Stevens High School, graduated from there, and then from there I went off to college in Spokane. My first year I went to Gonzaga University, and then ended up transferring over to Western Washington University for my last 3 years and got my degree there at Western Washington University.
Oh, excellent. So you are truly a local guy.
I am pretty
All right.
much born and raised in the Everett, Lake Stevens area my whole life.
Wow, that's awesome. Can you tell me a little bit about why you wanted to become a police officer?
Yeah, I can. For me, my interest in law enforcement started very early. It started in high school, and when I was 16 years old, I was one of the co-editors of the high school newspaper in Lake Stevens. And as part of that, I was fortunate enough to be involved in a program at that time called SAD, which was Students Against Drunk Driving.
Mm-hmm.
And associated with the stories that I was doing with that program, I had the opportunity to ride along with the Washington State Patrol at age 16, and had some great ride-alongs with the State Patrol, and I was pretty much hooked at that time after my first couple ride-alongs with the State Patrol, and being able to see the impact that the troopers at that time had in terms of safety on the roads, removing drunk drivers, responding to collisions, the interactions that they had with the public, the positive interactions, making positive differences in people's lives. And it really impressed me at a young age. And so from the time I was about 16 years old in high school, I knew what I wanted to do with my life, and I knew it was to be a police officer.
Well, that's great. You want to be a police officer, but not a state patrolman, right?
Well, obviously, yes, I want to be city police officer with the city of Everett.
Well, excellent. Well, kind of dovetailing on that, so throughout your career, you've held a lot of different positions. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. And you're right, I have held a variety of different positions within the police department. All of them have really been great assignments, I think, for me, and helped to prepare me and develop me for the position that I'm in today. But going back to when I first started 22 years ago, I started off in patrol, just like pretty much every new police officer does at any police department. And so I worked a couple of years as a graveyard patrol officer, worked the Riverside neighborhood primarily for the most part. And from there, I spent a couple of years in detectives as a traffic detective, and was also assigned as our total station operator at that time. And
What is that?
the total station is the device that it's a little computer head that sits on top of a tripod, and a lot of times the community most often sees them out on the street where traffic engineers are in construction sites, but we use it for mapping crime scenes. And at the time, myself and Sergeant Manny Garcia, we were the first two operators for that technology. We acquired that back in the late 90s. And so as a result of that, I was able to respond to a variety of different crime scenes and assist in those investigations in terms of mapping those crime scenes and mapping collision scenes, serious collision scenes. And then from there, was promoted to sergeant, worked patrol, night shift sergeant, again in North Everett, and was then fortunate enough after a couple of years in that assignment to be moved in as an administrative sergeant. And I worked as the South Administrative Sergeant and worked a lot with the Office of Neighborhoods at that time, and worked out south. And
Within that, didn't you also run the crime prevention and as well the senior volunteers at that time?
I did, absolutely. We started the crime prevention unit at that time, and that was with now Detective Steve Paxton was our first crime prevention officer that we started up. And so very, very good assignment for me, and learned a lot certainly in that assignment. From there, promoted to lieutenant and spent some time again back in patrol, because that's generally what happens is when you get promoted at the police department, if you're in a specialty unit, when you get promoted, you end up typically going back to operations, and then you, after you serve some time there, then you're eligible to move into another lateral position within the department. So I spent some time as a patrol lieutenant and then was transferred in as the Special Investigations Lieutenant. So at that time I oversaw vice, gambling, homeland security related type stuff, and also financial crimes and computer forensics at that time. And then after that, when I was promoted to captain, spent some time as the investigations captain, and as part of that assignment was the commander of the Snohomish County Multiple Agency Response Team, or the SMART team, which is the officer-involved shooting team, countywide team that investigates serious injury or fatality incidents involving law enforcement officers. And from there, spent some time in administrative services as captain. So in that assignment, I oversaw our records division, property room, and training. And then was fortunate enough to be asked by then Chief Kathy Atwood to be the deputy chief. And so I spent 3.5 years as a deputy chief over our operations division. And then, as you know, in June of this year, was appointed as the chief for the department. So held, like I say, a kind of a variety of different assignments throughout my career, and I think all of them have been great positions for me and have really afforded me the opportunities that I have today.
A lengthy career, and by the way, congratulations on becoming chief. That's excellent for our department.
Thank you.
You have done so many different things in the department, though. Is there any one that you really enjoyed? One that kind of stands out above the rest that you are all excited about?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, pretty much every assignment, has been a learning opportunity, and they've all been really great assignments for me. But as I look back and think about it, I'd have to say probably my time as an administrative sergeant in the South Precinct. And the reason why is because that was really the first position that I had that was non-operational, so non-patrol. And it was also my first opportunity to really get involved with the neighborhoods and get involved with the community in a different way than I typically did as a police officer. I was able to problem solve and work with different departments within the city to come up with solutions to bigger issues that patrol at the time was unable to deal with because they didn't have the time or the resources. And so as an administrative sergeant, I was able to, I had the time to be able to pull together the resources that were needed to address some of the complex issues facing the neighborhoods at that time. And in addition, being able to supervise the volunteers, the police volunteers. At that time I was the youngest sergeant on the department, and I was inheriting the most senior group within the police department that I was going to be supervising. And I had some apprehension about that, how was this going to work in this interaction? And it was truly one of the most rewarding assignments that I've had in my career, being able to supervise and work with the volunteers at that time and people that didn't have to be at the police department, didn't have to be out in the community, but chose to be and weren't getting paid for it, and were happy to be serving the community in any way they could.
That's awesome. So everyone always asks, do you have a really cool, interesting, funny story? And a pretty short one, though. But anything that was super exciting that happened to you?
Well, as you know, in this job, you encounter all kinds of different situations, and they're not always good situations. A lot of times we see people in situations that are not very positive, and so I will throw out just a recent encounter that I had that I thought was kind of interesting, and it had to do with somebody that received a ticket. And so most motorists, most citizens don't enjoy receiving a ticket. And
not sure why not.
Well, exactly. And so as chief and certainly throughout my career, I've always liked to be on the road, and I miss that day-to-day being out in patrol and being out on the road and being able to respond to calls. But I still, when I'm out there, like to make traffic stops. And if people commit violations in front of me, I'll stop them and chat with them, and occasionally I'll write a ticket or two. And I had an encounter after I became chief where I had stopped a motorist and he didn't have insurance, and I let him know, hey, I'm going to be writing you a ticket for no insurance, and I'll be right back with you. I went back to my car, came back up to his window, and he looked at me and he said, "Aren't you the new police chief?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And he says, "Wow, and you're out here making traffic stops and driving around." I said, "Yeah, because I really enjoy still being out here on the road." And he goes, "Well, that's really neat, to see somebody that's, high up in the administration that's still out making contacts and writing tickets." And so I ended up issuing him his ticket, and he took it from me and he looked at it and he said, "Wow, it's really an honor to get a ticket from the police chief." and he said, "Thank you," and drove off. And it was a very positive contact, certainly in a situation that may not necessarily be, but I think as police officers, and I think you understand this, that we have a job to do, and we're out there doing it, but we always try to have positive interactions and leave citizens with a positive feeling, if at all possible.
Yeah.
And this was one of those situations where we were able to do that.
And fortunately for you, I guess in this case, if he wants to talk to your boss, he'd have to talk to you.
He would. Or you.
Or me. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be right back after this commercial.
A few moments is all it takes for life to come to a screeching halt. At 20 miles per hour, that person has a 95% chance of living. A person struck at 40 miles per hour has an 85% chance of dying. Pedestrian deaths are senseless and preventable. Police are strictly enforcing safety laws. Slow down, be alert, be street smart.